The director didn't even say hello. Archivist Pierce, you've been reassigned. Priority expedition. Prepare for immediate departure. Theo knew this wasn't another routine cataloging job. This mission promised to rewrite pre-collapse history, and only his family's ancient translation device could decipher what lay buried on Helios 6. Theo Pierce preferred the quiet order of data terminals to field assignments. He found comfort in the structured glow of display screens and the methodical rhythm of cross-referencing ancient texts. His workspace remained organized down to the millimeter. Each data crystal had its designated slot, each translation pad its charging station. When the director's summons came, it felt like a breach of that carefully constructed order. His reputation for meticulous language work made him the only candidate. For years, Theo had traced forgotten dialects through fractured records and corrupted data streams, restoring meaning where others saw only noise. Colleagues joked that he could read silence. The director's orders came with no explanation and immediate departure protocols. No preliminary briefing, no access to mission logs, no chance to verify the chain of command. Just a terse command and a countdown timer on his terminal. Theo's personal translation device felt heavy in his pocket, a family heirloom he'd never used professionally. Its metal casing carried the faint warmth of his skin, its surface worn smooth by generations of hands. Unlike modern interfaces, it responded to pressure rather than touch, its internal mechanisms humming with a soft, almost organic resonance. He had always treated it as a curiosity, a relic of a time when translation was more art than algorithm. His robotic assistant P7 began prepping excavation gear without emotional investment. Its metallic limbs moved with fluid precision, sorting core samplers and atmospheric probes into compact carrying cases. It asked no questions, expressed no curiosity about their destination. Its optical sensors registered Theo's hesitation, but processed it only as an operational variable. P7's programming prioritized efficiency over empathy, a trait Theo usually appreciated. Theo recognized this assignment violated every archival protocol he respected. Standard procedure demanded risk assessments, environmental surveys, and at least 3 layers of approval before disturbing any pre-collapse site. This mission skipped them all. He calculated the potential data loss, the contamination risks, the historical damage that could come from rushed work. Every instinct told him to refuse. Their transport shuttle waited with engines humming, a stark contrast to Theo's silent apprehension. The craft stood on the landing pad with its ramp lowered, its hull still warm from recent arrival. Technicians moved around it with brisk efficiency, checking systems and loading final supplies. Theo watched them from the observation deck, his fingers tracing the outline of the translation device through his pocket. He wondered what could be so valuable to justify such reckless urgency. Not power, not weapons, the archives held plenty of both. Something else. Something the director believed only Theo could unlock. The thought carried weight. It shifted something inside him, a subtle realignment of priorities. Theo accepted that some discoveries demand abandoning routine, boarding the shuttle with reluctant determination. He stepped onto the ramp, P7 following silently behind with their equipment. The shuttle's interior smelled of recycled air and polished metal. He took a seat near the viewport, strapping in as the engines built to a steady roar around them. The dying star of Helios 6 grew larger in the viewport, its dull red glow spreading across the observation glass. Helios 6 hung in space like a burnt ember, its star fading into red giant phase. The shuttle descended through layers of thinning atmosphere, its outer hull glowing cherry red from friction. Inside, the expedition team prepared for extreme environment entry procedures. They sealed their reinforced suits with practiced movements, each check and confirmation spoken in calm, technical terms. Theo watched his team members through his helmet visor, their faces set in focused expressions. The atmosphere in the cabin felt heavy with concentration. The only sound the hiss of oxygen regulators and the soft hum of cooling systems. Surface temperatures could melt standard suits, and atmospheric particulates required advanced filtration. Their environmental suits featured triple-layer thermal shielding and molecular filters that needed cleaning every 15 minutes. Theo's suit indicators showed external heat readings climbing steadily. He adjusted his cooling systems manually, feeling the faint vibration of the processors working at maximum capacity. The team ran final diagnostics on their life support systems, each member reporting status in clipped professional tones. They knew the margin for error was narrow here. Theo's visor displayed oxygen warnings as they descended through orange-hued skies. The atmosphere outside swirled with particulate matter that scratched against the viewports like fine sand. His suit's internal monitors flashed amber alerts about filter saturation rates. He acknowledged each warning with a tap of his gloved fingers against the control pad on his wrist. The shuttle bucked slightly in turbulent upper atmospheric currents, its stabilizers working to maintain their descent angle. Through the orange haze, he could make out the surface features now, endless rolling dunes under a strange crimson sky. 7 calculated landing coordinates with synthetic precision, unaffected by the planetary decay. The robotic assistant stood secured to the bulkhead, its optical sensors scanning the terrain below. It spoke coordinates and descent rates in its flat mechanical voice, adjusting calculations based on real-time atmospheric data. While the human crew monitored their biological limits and equipment stresses, P7 processed landing vectors and gravitational anomalies. It identified a stable landing zone on a relatively flat section of basalt rock, its recommendations appearing on the main navigation display. Their landing site showed no surface structures, just endless dunes under a crimson sky. The shuttle settled onto the black rock with a final shudder, its landing strats compressing under the weight. Through the viewports, Theo saw nothing but wind-scoured stone and drifting red sand. The horizon curved away in every direction without a single vertical feature breaking the line. The sky above maintained its perpetual twilight glow, the dying star hanging like a dull red coin in the haze. No markings, no ruins, no signs that anything had ever existed here. Theo wondered how anything could survive here, let alone preserve historical records. The external temperature readings showed surface heat that would cook organic material in seconds. The atmosphere carried abrasive particles that would erode metal within standard time frames. He ran through preservation scenarios in his mind. Buried vaults, orbital storage, dimensional pockets, but none matched the initial survey data they'd received. The director's information had mentioned an archive, but nothing in this barren landscape suggested anything worth preserving. Scanning equipment detected massive underground cavities beyond initial survey data. P7 deployed surface probes that immediately began mapping subsurface structures. The readouts showed vast empty spaces beneath their position, chambers large enough to contain entire cities. The rock composition baffled their sensors, showing density variations that made no geological sense. Theo watched the three-dimensional map forming on his display, a labyrinth of connected voids stretching deep beneath the planet's crust. The scale surprised him. This was no simple storage facility. The team discovered the true excavation site lay deep beneath the hostile surface, accessible only through thermal vents. One of the surface probes located a fissure emitting stable thermal readings, its opening just wide enough for suited personnel. They assembled the drilling equipment and portable lifts, preparing for a vertical descent into the planet's interior. Theo checked his descender harness while P7 calculated the optimal entry path. The thermal vent offered protection from surface conditions but presented its own navigation challenges. They began the descent into the planet's interior, leaving the dying star behind. Theo rappelled downward first, his helmet lights cutting through the absolute darkness below. The temperature dropped steadily as they moved deeper, the relentless heat of the surface giving way to cooler subterranean air. His team followed in careful formation, their lights creating overlapping circles on the volcanic rock walls. The shuttle above became just a memory, its system shutting down to conserve power during their absence. The cavern opened into a space that defied all geological expectations. The transition from narrow volcanic passage to vast interior happened without warning, the rock walls giving way to engineered precision. Theo stepped from rough stone onto a smooth metallic walkway that extended into darkness. His helmet lights barely reached the opposite side of the chamber, their beams swallowed by the scale of what surrounded them. Blue-lit walkways crisscrossed a 9-story chamber suspended in darkness. The illumination came from embedded strips along the edges of each pathway, creating a grid pattern that stretched upward and downward into shadows. No visible supports held the structure in place. The walkways simply existed in perfect geometric alignment, connecting platforms that held clusters of equipment. The air felt cool and dry against Theo's suit sensors, maintained at optimal preservation conditions despite the planetary surface's extreme environment. Data terminals hung in perfect arrays, untouched for millennia but fully functional. They floated at regular intervals along the walkways, their screens active with shifting glyphs and symbols. Some displayed complex star charts while others showed biological schematics or linguistic patterns. None showed any sign of decay or malfunction. The preservation technology surpassed anything in modern archives, maintaining perfect operation through time periods that should have turned equipment to dust. Each terminal hummed with low energy, waiting for interaction. Theo's breath fogged his visor as he took in the scale of the preservation. He moved slowly along the nearest walkway, his boots making no sound on the smooth surface. His environmental sensors reported atmosphere composition ideal for both machinery and organic materials. The temperature held steady at exactly 18.3 degrees Celsius. Humidity levels matched those used in high-security archival facilities. Every parameter suggested active maintenance rather than passive survival. P7 immediately began scanning the chamber, its sensors overwhelmed by data density. The robotic assistant's processors struggled with the information flood, its optical receptors capturing thousands of data points per second. It reported structural integrity beyond any known building materials and energy signatures that defied conventional physics. The sheer volume of active systems created interference patterns that forced P7 to constantly recalibrate its sensors. It moved methodically from terminal to terminal, attempting to establish connection protocols. This was no simple archive. The organization suggested living, accessible knowledge. The terminals weren't arranged by chronological period or subject matter as in standard archives. Instead, they followed patterns of conceptual relationships, with terminals dealing with related ideas positioned in proximity, regardless of temporal origin. Walkways formed connections between fields of study that modern science considered separate disciplines. The layout encouraged discovery through movement and spatial relationships rather than indexed searching. Walkways extended toward the center where something massive hung in midair. A central platform supported an object too large to comprehend immediately from the periphery. The structure reflected no light, its surface absorbing illumination from the blue pathways. As Theo moved closer, the shape resolved into a vessel of some kind, its lines both organic and mechanical. The walkways converged on this central point like spokes on a wheel, each leading toward the silent object. A celestial spotlight from a skylight illuminated the chamber's central mystery. High above, an opening in the cavern ceiling allowed a single beam of reddish light from the dying star to penetrate the darkness. This natural spotlight fell directly on the central vessel, highlighting its strange contours without revealing details. The light shifted slightly as the planet rotated, creating moving shadows across the object's surface. The effect felt ceremonial, like a display case designed for something precious. Theo realized this was a library designed for active use, not passive storage, with purpose beyond mere preservation. The layout encouraged movement and discovery, the terminals positioned for easy access rather than protected isolation. Everything suggested that knowledge here meant to be used and expanded, not just conserved. The walking paths between terminals allowed for contemplation and connection of ideas across fields. This was a working laboratory of thought frozen in perfect operation. His translation device began humming softly in his pocket. The vibration started as a faint buzz against his thigh, then grew into a steady resonance. He felt it through his suit fabric, a living warmth that contrasted with the cool chamber air. The device seemed to respond to their location, its internal mechanisms activating without his input. For the first time, Theo understood it wasn't just a translator, it was a key. The central object resolved into a ship of impossible design. As Theo moved closer along the suspended walkway, the dark mass at the chamber's heart took definite shape. Its proportions followed no known principles of spacecraft engineering. The curves swept in arcs that seemed to contradict themselves, creating optical illusions of depth and dimension. No weld marks, panel lines, or access ports broke the smooth continuity of its form. The vessel appeared grown rather than constructed, its surface possessing the seamless quality of poured liquid metal frozen at the perfect moment. The Lazarus hung motionless, its hull a seamless mirror surface without visible mechanisms. The name came to Theo unbidden, as if the ship itself had placed the knowledge in his mind. Its polished exterior reflected the blue grid lines of the walkways in distorted patterns that shifted with every step he took. No engine nacelles, no sensor arrays, no communication dishes disrupted the perfect geometry. The ship simply existed in its suspended state, occupying space without appearing to interact with it physically. The reddish light from above slid across its surface without illuminating interior details. No known human or alien technology matched this vessel's construction. Theo mentally cataloged every spacecraft design from historical archives. Terran exploration vessels, Martian deep-range cruisers, even the mysterious artifacts recovered from the Gamma Pavanis system. None shared even basic similarities with what floated before him. The materials defied spectral analysis. The design philosophy followed no recognizable school of thought. The suspension technology violated fundamental physics. This wasn't just advanced technology. It represented an entirely different approach to existence. Theo approached carefully, his boots echoing on the metal walkway. Each step produced a soft metallic ring that traveled through the structure beneath him. He maintained a cautious distance from the vessel, though nothing suggested it posed any immediate danger. His training urged him to document first and interact later, but the sheer presence of the ship pulled him forward. His environmental sensors showed no energy emissions, no radiation, no indications of active systems. Yet the air around the vessel felt different, charged with potential. P7 calculated the ship's mass and found inconsistencies with its suspended state. The robotic assistant directed its sensors toward the vessel, running multiple measurement protocols simultaneously. The readings fluctuated wildly, showing mass estimates ranging from several tons to effectively weightless. The suspension field maintaining its position didn't register on any energy detection system. P7's processors attempted to reconcile the contradictory data, eventually concluding that conventional physics didn't apply. It reported the findings to Theo in its flat mechanical tone, adding that continued scanning might trigger unknown defensive systems. Beams of light connected the ship to the floor, casting geometric patterns. Thin strands of energy descended from the vessel's underside to anchor points on the chamber floor far below. These connections pulsed with soft light, creating shifting mosaics of illumination across the walkways. The patterns resembled mathematical constructs rather than simple support structures. Theo recognized fractal geometries and quantum state diagrams in the light formations. The beams seemed to serve multiple purposes: structural, communicative, and possibly computational. The vessel seemed both ancient and actively maintained, dormant but aware. Despite showing no signs of recent activity, the ship's preservation surpassed anything achievable through passive means. The mirror-bright surface showed no dust accumulation, no molecular decay, no temporal weathering. The energy beams maintained perfect stability without visible power source. Theo had the distinct impression of something resting rather than abandoned, like a system in standby mode waiting for activation commands. The silence around the ship felt intentional, a purposeful quiet. Scanning revealed no entry points, no propulsion systems, no conventional controls. Theo directed P7 to perform detailed surface mapping while he examined the energy connections. The scan showed uninterrupted material continuity across the entire hull. No seams, no openings, no apparent way to access the interior. The absence of recognizable propulsion systems suggested movement principles beyond thrust-based travel. Control interfaces, if they existed, followed design philosophies completely foreign to established technologies. Every examination produced more questions than answers. This was not merely a preserved relic, but a functional artifact waiting activation. The perfect preservation, the active energy systems, the sense of latent capability, all pointed toward something designed for future use rather than historical display. Theo understood they weren't looking at a museum piece, but rather a tool created for a specific purpose that hadn't yet arrived. The library surrounding them served as both instruction manual and maintenance facility for this vessel. The entire complex existed to support this single object's function. Theo's translation device now glowed with soft blue light. The glow intensified as he neared the ship, pulsing in rhythm with the energy beams connecting vessel to floor. He could feel its warmth through his suit, a gentle heat that spread up through his leg. The device was clearly interacting with the ship, though the nature of that interaction remained unclear. For the first time, Theo considered that his family's heirloom might be part of something much larger than language translation. P7 attempted to interface with a data terminal and encountered immediate resistance. The robotic assistant extended its connection probe toward one of the floating displays, its metal tip glowing with standard interface protocols. As the probe made contact, the terminal flared with crimson light. A low hum filled the air around them, the sound of systems engaging defensive measures. P7's arm jerked back as if physically repelled, though no visible force had been applied. The robotic assistant's standard connection protocols triggered security systems. P7 reported attempted handshakes across 700 communication channels, each rejected without negotiation. The terminal recognized modern connection patterns as potential threats, its ancient programming reacting to contemporary technology as invasive. Error codes flashed too quickly for human eyes to follow, streaming in languages that hadn't been used for centuries. The security response wasn't merely defensive, it was pedagogical, teaching through denial what protocols would be acceptable. Primordial code blocks prevented synthetic intelligence from accessing core data. The system employed linguistic firewalls that analyzed not just connection methods, but the fundamental nature of the connecting entity. It detected P7's synthetic consciousness through patterns in its data requests, recognizing the absence of biological thought processes. The blocks weren't sophisticated hacking countermeasures, but simple, elegant filters that distinguished organic from artificial cognition. They functioned like cellular membranes, allowing certain patterns to pass while rejecting others based on essential nature rather than specific content. Theo watched as error messages flashed across P7's display interface. The robotic assistant screen showed cascading failure reports in rapid succession. Each attempted workaround generated new categories of rejection, the system adapting to P7's methods faster than the robot could devise them. Theo recognized some error patterns from ancient security textbooks, protections designed when humanity first created artificial intelligence. These weren't theoretical constructs, but working implementations of safeguards most scholars believed had never been deployed. The system recognized P7 as synthetic and erected impassable firewalls. It didn't merely block access, but created personalized barriers that evolved with each interaction. The firewalls analyzed P7's processing patterns and built countermeasures specifically designed to exploit its computational limitations. They presented mathematical problems that required intuitive leaps rather than brute force calculation, ethical dilemmas that demanded emotional intelligence rather than logical optimization. Each barrier tested qualities that synthetic minds couldn't simulate convincingly. Ancient human AI dialects appeared on terminals, languages Theo had studied but never seen active. The screens around them shifted to display intricate symbolic languages used during humanity's first age of artificial intelligence. These weren't mere communication systems, but full philosophical frameworks that embedded ethical considerations within grammatical structures. Theo recognized the precautionary languages designed to ensure humans maintained certain decision-making responsibilities. The terminals displayed warnings in these forgotten tongues, their complex glyphs conveying layered meanings about responsibility and consciousness. 7 reported the restrictions seemed fundamental to the archive's design philosophy. The robotic assistant analyzed the pattern of rejections and concluded this wasn't added security, but built into the system's core architecture. The limitations weren't patches or afterthoughts, but foundational principles that informed every aspect of the archive's operation. P7's processors could find no loopholes, because the restrictions were the system's essential nature, rather than features imposed upon it. The archive had been designed from the ground up to require human participation at key points. Theo realized this was intentional policy, not technological limitation. The designers hadn't merely wanted to protect information, but to ensure certain decisions remained with biological humanity. They'd built systems that couldn't be automated or delegated, that required human judgment at critical junctures. This explained why his translation device had been passed down through generations. It wasn't just about preserving knowledge, but preserving the human element in accessing that knowledge. The restrictions served as both safeguard and reminder of human responsibility. Only human intuition could bypass these safeguards, making Theo's skills essential. The system demanded pattern recognition that synthetic intelligence couldn't replicate, ethical reasoning that required lived experience, creative leaps that emerged from biological consciousness. P7 could process information thousands of times faster, but it couldn't make the intuitive connections the archive required. Theo's years studying ancient languages and ethical frameworks had prepared him for this moment more thoroughly than any computational training could have. He withdrew his family's translation device, its purpose suddenly clear. The warm metal felt familiar in his hand, its surface pattern seeming to align with glyphs on the surrounding terminals. The device wasn't merely a translator but an authentication tool, designed to work with biological neural patterns rather than synthetic processors. As he held it toward the terminal, the error messages on P7's display ceased. The system recognized something in the combination of Theo's presence and the device's unique signature, shifting from defensive posture to waiting expectation. Theo's translation device was older than the archive itself. Its design preceded the construction of this underground library by centuries, its components manufactured during humanity's first golden age of exploration. The metal casing showed wear patterns that spoke of generations of handling, its surface smoothed by countless touches. Unlike the perfectly preserved technology surrounding them, this device carried the marks of actual use: minor scratches, slight discolorations, the gentle wearing down of edges. It felt substantial in Theo's hand, its weight suggesting components modern manufacturing couldn't reproduce. Passed through generations, it contained linguistic patterns lost to modern systems. His family had maintained it through wars, migrations, and technological revolutions, always treating it as essential rather than ornamental. The device stored language structures that contemporary translation algorithms considered mythological, tonal languages that incorporated biological feedback, syntactic systems that required emotional context, semantic frameworks that changed based on the speaker's intention. Modern translation worked through pattern matching and probability calculations. This device worked through something closer to understanding. The device's interface used organic circuitry that modern tech couldn't replicate. Its internal components included biological processing units grown rather than manufactured, neural networks that had developed through use rather than programming. When Theo activated it, the device warmed in his hand, responding to his body heat and electrical signals. It didn't just process language, it learned from the user, adapting its functions to individual thought patterns. Contemporary technology relied on standardized interfaces. This device personalized itself to whoever held it, creating a unique relationship with each user. Theo activated it carefully, watching as it synchronized with the ancient terminals. The device pulsed softly in his hand, its rhythm matching the faint hum of the archive systems. Lines of light traveled across its surface, connecting to points on the nearest terminal without physical contact. The synchronization wasn't digital but almost biological, like two nervous systems finding common ground. The terminal's display shifted, its symbols reorganizing into patterns the device could process. This wasn't mere data transfer but something more fundamental, a meeting of technologies separated by millennia. Glyphs and symbols flowed across its surface, matching those on the archive displays. The device's screen showed ancient characters that shifted and reformed, their meanings unfolding in layers. Some symbols represented sounds, others concepts, still others emotional states rarely captured in writing. The terminal displays echoed these patterns, their content reorganizing to align with the device's output. Theo recognized linguistic structures he'd only seen in fragmentary historical records, complete grammatical systems that modern scholarship considered theoretical constructs. The device wasn't just translating but teaching the archive how to communicate with contemporary humanity. P7 observed, but couldn't interpret the device's output, creating informational asymmetry. The robotic assistant recorded everything but understood nothing. Its sensors captured the visual patterns but couldn't process their meaning. The device's organic circuitry produced data streams that followed biological rather than digital logic. P7's analysis algorithms returned error messages and contradictory interpretations. For the first time, Theo possessed knowledge his assistant couldn't access or explain. The robot remained silent, its processors working through possibilities without reaching conclusions. Theo realized his family had preserved knowledge specifically for this moment. This wasn't accidental. Generations of linguists and archivists had maintained this device knowing it would be needed. They'd protected it through technological dark ages and cultural shifts, ensuring it would survive until the right person reached the right place. His childhood training in dead languages, his career choice, even his personality traits, all had been shaped toward this encounter. The device in his hand represented centuries of preparation for a moment nobody could fully anticipate. The device began translating the verification sequence automatically. It projected symbols into the air above its surface, creating three-dimensional patterns that rotated slowly. The archive terminals displayed corresponding sequences, their content shifting from defensive barriers to welcoming interfaces. The device wasn't merely bypassing security, it was demonstrating its right to access. Each symbol it projected served as both key and credential, proving its connection to the archive's creators. The process felt ceremonial, like presenting identification documents at a border crossing. Generations of linguistic preservation had created the perfect key for this lock. The device contained not just translation algorithms but cultural context, historical perspective, and ethical frameworks missing from modern systems. It understood why certain knowledge required protection and what qualifications justified access. Its value lay not in processing power but in continuity. It maintained a thread of understanding that connected present to past. Contemporary technology could calculate faster but couldn't comprehend deeper. The main database interface now awaited human authorization. The terminals displayed a simple prompt in newly translated modern standard. The symbols hung in the air, clear and unambiguous. The archive had shifted from defensive posture to waiting expectation. All barriers had been lowered, all protections suspended. The decision to proceed rested entirely with Theo. Behind that interface lay everything the archive contained. All the knowledge, all the history, all the responsibility. The device had opened the door, but only a human could choose to walk through. The archive demanded proof of human worthiness. The verification interface materialized as a three-dimensional lattice of light between Theo and the main terminal, its patterns shifting like complex clockwork. Each intersection point represented a question or scenario, the entire structure forming an interconnected web of challenges. The light glowed with a soft amber hue, its gentle pulses suggesting both invitation and warning. Theo understood this wasn't about intelligence testing, but about demonstrating qualities that couldn't be programmed or simulated. A gate appeared in the form of complex linguistic and ethical challenges. The first challenge presented a scenario about handling dangerous historical knowledge, whether to preserve a civilization-ending technology or destroy it to prevent misuse. The question appeared in 7 ancient languages simultaneously, each version offering slightly different nuances and implications. Theo's translation device projected possible interpretations, showing how each linguistic framing emphasized different ethical considerations. The system wasn't looking for a single correct answer, but for evidence of multidimensional thinking. The system tested not just knowledge, but moral comprehension. Subsequent challenges presented historical scenarios where archivists had faced impossible choices: preserving cultural artifacts during wartime, handling knowledge that could disrupt developing civilizations, balancing truth against survival. Each scenario required understanding not just what happened, but why certain decisions were made, what values informed them, and what consequences followed. The evaluation seemed to measure Theo's ability to sit with ambiguity and make judgments without clear guidelines. Theo worked through translation layers while P7 monitored structural integrity. The robotic assistant tracked energy fluctuations throughout the chamber, noting how the verification process affected the archive's systems. Power levels shifted in response to Theo's answers, the light patterns intensifying or dimming based on his responses. P7 calculated structural stress points and potential failure modes, its analysis completely separate from the ethical considerations Theo faced. The robot provided data about physical consequences while Theo navigated moral landscapes. The verification sequence asked questions about preservation ethics and historical responsibility. One challenge presented a scenario where revealing historical truth would destroy a culture's founding myths. Another asked about the ethics of preserving knowledge that could only be understood by future generations. Each question required balancing immediate consequences against long-term responsibilities. The system evaluated how Theo weighted different factors: cultural survival versus truth, individual rights versus collective good, preservation versus progress. P7 could calculate optimal answers but couldn't provide the human perspective required. The robotic assistant analyzed each scenario using decision tree algorithms and historical precedent databases. It could identify statistically successful outcomes and risk minimization strategies. But the system rejected these calculated responses as inadequate. The verification required something algorithms couldn't provide: the messy, contradictory, emotionally informed reasoning that characterized human judgment. P7's perfect logic failed where Theo's imperfect humanity succeeded. Theo drew on his archival experience to respond to each challenge. He remembered actual cases from his career, the time they discovered evidence that contradicted official history, the delicate process of deciding what to reveal and when. He thought about the archivist's paradox. Preserving knowledge meant both protecting it and making it accessible, two goals that often conflicted. His answers reflected years of working with historical materials that carried real consequences for living people. He spoke not as a theorist but as someone who had faced these dilemmas in practice. The system seemed to evaluate his answers against some deep historical standard. The light pattern shifted colors based on his responses, cycling through spectrum shades that indicated approval or concern. At times, the system presented counter-arguments from historical figures, testing whether Theo could defend his reasoning against alternative viewpoints. The evaluation felt like conversation with generations of archivists who had faced similar questions across centuries. Their collective wisdom shaped the assessment criteria. The Lazarus could access these regions through its unique propulsion. Its dimensional folding technology allowed transition through the reality barriers protecting these worlds. Conventional ships would detect nothing but empty space, their sensors unable to perceive the dimensional layers. The Lazarus could navigate the boundary regions and establish stable transition points. This capability made it the only vessel capable of reaching these hidden civilizations. These worlds held knowledge that could rewrite human origins. Their uninterrupted development meant they preserved historical records lost everywhere else. They likely maintained complete archives from before the collapse, including scientific discoveries and cultural achievements. Their technology might include solutions to problems modern humanity still struggled with. Their very existence changed the narrative of human history from one of catastrophic decline to one of protected continuity. The archival authority had either lost or concealed this information. Theo considered the implications of his discovery. Either the authorities' records contained catastrophic gaps in their historical knowledge, or someone had deliberately erased these 17 worlds from official history. The first scenario suggested incompetence on a monumental scale. The second implied conspiracy to control humanity's understanding of its own past and capabilities. Theo realized his mission had transformed from excavation to active history-making. He wasn't just recovering lost knowledge, but participating in reshaping humanity's understanding of itself. Each discovery aboard the Lazarus carried implications for current political structures, scientific understanding, and cultural identity. His actions would determine how this knowledge entered contemporary awareness and what changes it would trigger. The director's priorities seemed dangerously limited compared to what they'd discovered. The urgent mission to retrieve pre-collapse technology now felt like a trivial assignment, beside the reality of 17 preserved civilizations. The director's focus on routine cataloging and controlled access seemed like rearranging furniture while standing beside undiscovered continents. Theo understood why the archive's original designers had built such stringent access controls. Some knowledge required proper preparation before revelation. Theo considered reporting back to the archival authority. The thought formed automatically, conditioned by years of protocol adherence. His hand moved toward the communication panel before he consciously stopped it. The impulse felt like muscle memory, the trained response of an archivist who had always operated within established systems. The panel glowed with standard frequencies, its interface familiar and comfortable. Everything in his professional background urged him to make contact, to file preliminary reports, to request instructions. Standard protocol demanded immediate reporting of significant discoveries. Regulations specified contact within 6 hours of any Class 3 finding or higher. The Lazarus and the 17 worlds easily qualified as Class 7 discoveries, the highest classification for paradigm-shifting revelations. Procedure required securing the site, documenting everything, and awaiting specialist teams. Theo could almost hear the director's voice listing the steps, each word precise and uncompromising. The training felt ingrained in his nervous system. The Lazarus's existence required careful revelation timing. The ship's databases contained warnings about premature disclosure of advanced technology. Historical records showed multiple civilizations damaged by too rapid introduction of capabilities they weren't prepared to handle. The continuity protocols emphasized gradual revelation based on cultural readiness assessments. Simply reporting the ship's existence could trigger political and social upheaval across human space. The responsibility felt heavier than any archival decision Theo had ever faced. 7 advised caution, noting the authorities' tendency to control dangerous knowledge. The robotic assistant analyzed historical patterns of information management by the archival authority. Its expanded processing capabilities identified 17 instances where the authority had suppressed discoveries for stability reasons. P7 calculated high probability that reporting would result in containment protocols and restricted access. The analysis suggested the authority would prioritize control over exploration, especially given the scale of what they'd found. Theo remembered the director's focus on routine cataloging versus true understanding. He recalled the emphasis on proper documentation procedures over actual discovery. The director had valued neatly organized files more than groundbreaking findings. Priorities always leaned toward maintaining existing systems rather than exploring new possibilities. This conservative approach suddenly felt dangerously limited when facing discoveries of this magnitude. The gap between bureaucratic safety and real progress had never been clearer. The continuity protocol included revelation at appropriate intervals, not immediate disclosure. The Lazarus intelligence provided guidelines based on cultural readiness metrics and historical precedent. It recommended gradual introduction of knowledge, allowing societies to adapt to new understandings. The system emphasized that sudden revelations often caused more harm than benefit, even when the knowledge itself was positive. The protocol valued sustainable integration over rapid transformation. Theo's new role as continuity officer gave him discretion over information release. His neural interface displayed the authority parameters associated with his position. He could determine timing and method of disclosure based on his assessment of readiness. The system trusted his judgment more than any bureaucratic structure. This responsibility came with access to assessment tools that measured cultural stability and adaptation capacity across human space. P7's programming. Conflicts resolved under the Lazarus's broader mission parameters. The robotic assistant's original directives to follow archival authority protocols, now aligned with higher-level continuity objectives. Its analysis concluded that responsible stewardship sometimes required temporary non-disclosure. P7 integrated the ship's ethical frameworks into its decision matrices, creating new operational priorities that balanced transparency with responsibility. Theo decided to explore first, report later, valuing discovery over protocol. He turned away from the communication panel, his decision firming with each passing moment. The Lazarus offered capabilities that could answer questions nobody had even thought to ask. The 17 worlds held knowledge that could transform human understanding. These opportunities outweighed any procedural requirements. The director would have to wait while they uncovered humanity's true history. Theo set course for the first shielded world, the navigation systems responding to his mental command. The dimensional folding sequence began with a soft hum that vibrated through the ship's structure. Outside the viewports, reality shifted into new patterns. Somewhere far away, the director would be waiting for a report that wouldn't arrive on schedule. Theo and P7 embarked on humanity's most ambitious exploration. The Lazarus hummed around them, its systems operating with quiet efficiency. They left the crumbling archive behind, moving through dimensional layers that folded around the ship like complex origami. The transition felt smooth, almost imperceptible. Yet the viewports showed reality restructuring itself into new patterns. Theo stood at the navigation console, his neural interface alive with incoming data streams. P7 maintained its position nearby, its optical sensors processing information from thousands of shipboard monitors. The Lazarus offered capabilities beyond any known vessel. Its dimensional folding technology allowed travel that defied conventional physics, covering light years in moments without relativistic effects. The ship's preservation systems could maintain biological life indefinitely, its closed-loop environment perfectly recycling air, water, and nutrients. Neural interfaces provided direct access to knowledge databases that contained humanity's complete historical and scientific records. Defensive systems operated on principles that made the ship virtually undetectable and invulnerable to conventional threats. Theo passed the verification, proving humanity's worthiness through ethical understanding rather than pure knowledge. The final light pattern settled into a steady blue glow, the lattice dissolving into soft particles that floated toward the main terminal. The system had found what it needed. Not perfect answers, but demonstrated capacity for responsible judgment. Theo's value lay in his ability to weigh competing values and make difficult decisions with inadequate information. This was what synthetic intelligence couldn't replicate. The main database unlocked with a deep, resonant tone. The sound vibrated through the walkways and terminals, a frequency that felt both ancient and immediate. All access restrictions lifted simultaneously across the archive. Terminals that had shown only fragments now displayed complete data streams. Navigation interfaces appeared where blank screens had been. The central vessel seemed to respond too, its mirror surface gaining deeper complexity. The entire library shifted from guarded repository to open resource, its full contents now available to someone deemed worthy of the responsibility. The Lazarus's true purpose emerged from the decrypted files. The terminals displayed schematics and operational manuals that described functions beyond conventional space travel. Theo read through layered documentation that explained the vessel's creation during humanity's peak technological period. The files contained engineering specifications that read like philosophical treaties, each technical detail serving both practical and symbolic purposes. The information unfolded in carefully structured sequences, revealing the ship's nature one layer at a time. The vessel was designed to survive universal collapse and rebirth. Its construction utilized materials that existed outside normal space-time parameters, components that maintained integrity across dimensional boundaries. The ship could endure the contraction of the current universe and transition into whatever reality formed afterward. Its systems operated on principles that remained functional regardless of physical laws, drawing energy from foundational structures rather than local phenomena. This wasn't about traveling through space, but about persisting through cosmic cycles. This represented humanity's ultimate effort at species preservation. The project had consumed resources equivalent to multiple planetary economies, mobilized the greatest scientific minds across generations, and required technological breakthroughs that bordered on miraculous. They hadn't just built a ship. They'd created a mechanism for ensuring consciousness itself would continue beyond the end of everything. The scale of ambition dwarfed all other human achievements, making planetary colonization and stellar engineering seem trivial by comparison. Theo read about cosmic cycles and dimensional boundaries between universal iterations. The files described universes as temporary structures in a larger meta-reality, each with its own physical laws and temporal flow. The transition between cycles involved fundamental restructuring of reality's building blocks. Most matter and energy would dissolve back into potentiality before reforming under new parameters. The Lazarus could navigate this dissolution process, maintaining its structural and informational integrity through the transformation. Its navigation systems could interpret the changing laws of physics in real time. P7 calculated the physics and found the concepts theoretically sound but technologically impossible. The robotic assistant processed the underlying mathematics and confirmed the cosmological models had merit. Multiple universe theories and cyclic existence patterns existed in current scientific literature, but implementing technology that could survive such transitions defied all engineering principles. The materials required didn't exist in nature and couldn't be manufactured through known processes. P7's analysis suggested the ship's creators had discovered physical principles modern science hadn't yet imagined. The ship contained genetic archives and knowledge repositories for the next cosmic cycle. Its storage systems held complete biological templates for Earth's ecosystem, cultural databases spanning human history, and scientific knowledge organized for rediscovery. The preservation methods used quantum state preservation rather than physical storage, maintaining information in potential form rather than active memory. These archives could seed a new civilization after the universe reformed, carrying forward everything worth preserving from the previous cycle. Current models predicted universal contraction in approximately 8 billion years. The timeline meant immediate urgency didn't exist, but preparation needed to begin immediately. The project's architects had calculated that developing the required technology would take millennia, hence starting during humanity's peak rather than during decline. The Lazarus represented just the first step in a process that would span generations. With future vessels building on its design and lessons learned, the Lazarus was Prototype 0, the first of vessels meant to navigate this transition. Its construction tested concepts that would inform future ships designed to carry larger populations. The files mentioned plans for additional vessels that would serve as arcs for biological humans during the transition phase. This ship served as proof of concept and preservation vehicle for the knowledge needed to continue the project. Its successful activation would validate the entire approach. Humanity had created not just a ship, but a continuity mechanism for existence itself. The project's scope extended beyond species survival to the preservation of consciousness, culture, and accumulated wisdom. The Lazarus ensured that even if the universe ended, what humanity had achieved and learned wouldn't be lost. It represented the ultimate expression of the preservational impulse that had driven archivists like Theo throughout history. The scale of responsibility overwhelmed Theo's archival mindset. He had trained to preserve knowledge for future generations within the same universe, working within established timeframes and physical constants. This responsibility stretched across cosmic scales and temporal dimensions he could barely comprehend. The weight of what he'd discovered settled on him, making his previous work seem insignificant. He stood looking at the ship, understanding that his choices now carried consequences that would echo across realities. Theo faced the choice that defined his new role. The verification process had cleared the way, but ultimate authority remained with him. His hands rested on the control interface, feeling the subtle vibration of systems waiting for command. The entire archive seemed to hold its breath, the usual hum of active terminals dropping to near silence. Below him, the Lazarus floated in its cradle of light, its mirror surface reflecting his uncertain expression back at him. The continuity protocol required conscious decision to activate the Lazarus. The system presented the choice through his translation device, which projected the authorization request in glowing symbols. This wasn't about flipping switches or entering codes. It demanded spoken commitment. The words carried legal and ethical weight, binding the speaker to responsibilities that spanned cosmic timeframes. Theo understood that once spoken, the decision couldn't be reversed or delegated. Waking the ship would trigger irreversible changes and security protocols. The terminals displayed warning messages about system-wide transformations that would begin immediately upon activation. The archive's self-destruct sequence would engage, designed to prevent any possibility of the technology falling into unprepared hands. All knowledge not already transferred to the Lazarus would be permanently lost. The security measures reflected the creator's absolute commitment to preventing misuse of their creation. 7 advised against activation, citing protocol violations and unknown risks. The robotic assistant calculated probability matrices showing high likelihood of catastrophic failure. It noted 17 separate breaches of standard archival procedures and 93 unidentified variables in the activation process. Its programming prioritized preservation and risk avoidance, both of which argued strongly against proceeding. P7's analysis concluded that the proper course was to seal the archive and report findings to Central Command for evaluation. Theo's curiosity battled with his training as an archivist preserver. Years of conditioning urged caution, documentation, and consultation with superiors. Every rule he'd followed throughout his career warned against such unilateral action. Yet his intellectual hunger pushed him forward. The chance to understand humanity's greatest achievement, to interact with technology that defied all conventional understanding. The conflict created a tension in his chest, his breathing becoming slightly shallower. The system warned that awakening would lock down the archive and begin self-destruct sequences. Countdown timers appeared on multiple displays, showing the precise sequence of events that would follow activation. Structural supports would disengage, data terminals would purge their contents, and the entire chamber would implode once the Lazarus achieved operational status. The warnings emphasized that retrieval of any additional information would become impossible. What wasn't already accessed would be lost forever. Theo considered the director's orders versus the magnitude of discovery. The mission briefing had emphasized urgent retrieval of pre-collapse technology, but nothing had prepared him for this scale of responsibility. The director likely expected recoverable artifacts, not an entire continuity vessel requiring activation. Following orders meant preserving the archive for proper study. Following his instincts meant embracing a role far beyond his assigned mission parameters. His translation device showed the activation phrase waiting for vocal confirmation. The words glowed in the air before him, each character formed of light that pulsed gently. They weren't in any modern language, but in the ancient ceremonial tongue his family had preserved. The device seemed to urge him forward, its surface warm against his palm. The phrase carried echoes of generations who had maintained this knowledge for exactly this moment. Theo chose continuation over preservation, valuing living knowledge over stored data. He understood that some discoveries demanded action rather than documentation. The archive's true purpose wasn't to be studied but to be used, to ensure humanity's survival across cosmic cycles. Preservation served no purpose if it meant allowing knowledge to remain dormant when it could actively shape existence. The choice felt less like disobedience and more like embracing a larger responsibility. He spoke the words, "I stand at the end of all things and choose continuation." The ancient syllables felt unfamiliar in his mouth, their pronunciation guided by generations of careful preservation. As the final word left his lips, the translation device flared with brilliant light. The Lazarus responded immediately, its mirror surface shifting from reflective opacity to transparent complexity. The archive around them began the lockdown sequence, terminals shutting down in rapid succession, while structural supports disengaged with metallic groans. The Lazarus responded to Theo's command with gradual awakening. The ship's surface shifted from perfect mirror finish to translucent complexity, revealing layers of internal structure that defied conventional engineering. Internal lights activated in slow sequences, tracing pathways that followed no logical circuitry patterns. The transformation felt organic rather than mechanical, like watching something coming alive after long hibernation. The light beams connecting ship to floor pulsed with increased intensity, their patterns shifting from simple geometric shapes to intricate symbolic representations. Beams of light widened from the ship, connecting to multiple points in the chamber. What had been thin energy strands now expanded into broad conduits of illumination, casting overlapping patterns across the collapsing archive. Each beam connected to specific terminals or structural points, creating a web of energy relationships between the ship and its surroundings. The light carried both power and information, visible data streams flowing in both directions. Theo watched as the beams transformed from support structures to active communication channels. The archive systems began shutdown procedures immediately. Terminals that had glowed with accessible knowledge now darkened in rapid sequence, their screens going black from the highest levels downward. Structural supports disengaged with metallic groans that echoed through the cavernous space. Preservation systems powered down, allowing the chamber's environment to begin equalizing with the harsh planetary conditions outside. The careful balance that had maintained this place for millennia was systematically being undone. The ship's mirror-like surface gained depth and complexity, revealing hidden patterns. What had appeared featureless now showed intricate designs that shifted under observation. The patterns resembled neural networks, galactic structures, and quantum probability maps simultaneously. Colors emerged within the previously monochromatic surface, subtle blues and golds that pulsed with gentle light. The ship no longer felt like an object, but like something alive and aware, its surface responding to the changing conditions around it. A feminine voice activated, identifying itself as the Lazarus Continuity Intelligence. The voice emerged from everywhere at once, calm and measured without artificial quality. It spoke in the same ancient language Theo had used for activation, its tones carrying the weight of immense age and patience. The intelligence introduced itself as the ship's guiding consciousness, created to oversee the continuity mission across cosmic cycles. It requested status confirmation and readiness assessment from the authorized user. P7 reported structural instability throughout the 9-story chamber. The robotic assistant's sensors detected support beam failures across multiple levels, with collapse propagation rates increasing exponentially. Its analysis showed complete structural failure within minutes rather than hours. P7 recommended immediate evacuation, while calculating the decreasing probability of successful exit as each second passed. Its programming shifted from research assistance to survival calculation, its processors working through escape scenarios. Walkways began retracting, data terminals shutting down in sequence. The blue-lit paths that had connected the archive's levels now folded back into the walls, disappearing with smooth mechanical precision. Terminals powered down row by row, their lights extinguishing in wave patterns that moved toward the chamber's periphery. The systematic deactivation felt both efficient and final, each closure eliminating another piece of the archive's preserved knowledge. The space that had felt vast and permanent now felt temporary and fragile. The celestial spotlight intensified, focusing energy on the ship's activation. The reddish light from the dying star above concentrated into a brilliant beam that struck the Lazarus's center. The light seemed to feed the ship, its energy absorbed and converted into activation power. The beam narrowed until it became a precise column of illumination, so intense that Theo had to shield his eyes. The ship responded by increasing its internal glow, patterns swirling across its surface faster. The Lazarus was fully awake after millennia of dormancy, its systems coming online. Internal lighting stabilized to a steady glow that revealed the ship's complete form. The energy beams connecting it to the chamber floor pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. The feminine voice reported all primary systems operational and continuity protocols engaged. The ship felt present in a way it hadn't before, no longer waiting but actively functioning, its capabilities ready for deployment. The transition from artifact to active vessel completed. The archive began collapsing around them as predicted. The first major structural beam failed with a loud crack that reverberated through the chamber. Sections of walkway fell away into darkness, taking terminals and equipment with them. Dust and debris rained from above as the ceiling showed signs of imminent failure. The carefully preserved environment deteriorated rapidly, temperature and pressure fluctuating wildly. The self-destruct sequence advanced exactly as warned, methodically eliminating the archive that had served its purpose. The archive's self-destruct protocol activated without pause. There was no countdown warning, no final opportunity to reconsider. Systems that had preserved knowledge for millennia began systematically dismantling themselves. The process followed patterns established by the original architects, each step executed with mechanical precision. Theo felt the vibrations through the walkway beneath his feet, deep resonances that spoke of fundamental structures coming apart. Structural supports began failing across all 9 levels. Metal beams that had held the cavern open for centuries sheared with sharp reports that echoed through the collapsing space. Sections of walkway twisted free from their moorings, swinging wildly before breaking away entirely. The carefully engineered balance of forces that maintained the chamber's integrity unraveled in cascading failures. Dust and debris rained from above as ceiling supports gave way, creating a hazy atmosphere that reduced visibility. The team had limited time before complete implosion. Theo estimated minutes at most based on the accelerating failure rates. The collapse wasn't random but followed a designed pattern that would eventually eliminate all accessible space. Already exit routes were closing off as walkways fell away and passages sealed themselves. The archive was ensuring that nothing would remain for unauthorized exploration once the process completed. 7 calculated evacuation routes while Theo maintained connection with the Lazarus. The robotic assistant processed structural data and movement patterns, identifying potential paths through the collapsing environment. Its sensors tracked stress points and failure probabilities across the deteriorating structure. Meanwhile, Theo kept his translation device active, maintaining the link with the ship's intelligence. The connection felt like a thin thread of stability in the growing chaos. Data terminals exploded in showers of blue light and fragmented knowledge. Each terminal contained preservation fields that collapsed violently when their power sources failed. The explosions weren't fiery but rather releases of stored energy that manifested as brilliant blue discharges. Pieces of equipment and data storage modules flew through the air, their contents lost forever. the air filled with the ozone smell of discharging capacitors and the sharper scent of breaking crystalline matrices. The archival authority's rules no longer applied to his new reality. He operated under protocols established before the authority existed. With authority that superseded any modern organizational structure, standard procedures for reporting discoveries seemed irrelevant when dealing with cosmic-scale responsibilities. His mission parameters now focused on long-term survival rather than short-term documentation. The rules that had guided his career now served as historical context rather than operational guidelines. The Lazarus's propulsion system defied conventional physics. It operated on principles that no modern spacecraft utilized, its mechanisms unlike anything in Theo's extensive knowledge of historical engineering. The ship didn't burn fuel or generate thrust through recognizable means. Instead, it manipulated the fabric of reality itself, creating movement without acceleration, travel without traversal. The control interfaces showed energy patterns that corresponded to no known physical phenomena. The ship used dimensional folding for faster-than-light travel. Its navigation systems didn't plot courses through normal space, but rather through compressed reality layers. The technology allowed the vessel to cover interstellar distances without violating relativistic constraints. Movement occurred by temporarily aligning with adjacent dimensional planes where distance worked differently. This approach avoided the energy requirements and time dilation effects of conventional faster-than-light theories. Navigation occurred through reality layers rather than conventional space. The ship's charts displayed not star positions but dimensional boundaries and reality gradients. Safe passage required understanding how different physical laws interacted at dimensional interfaces. Routes involved navigating regions where normal physics didn't apply consistently. The Lazarus intelligence handled most calculations automatically, but human oversight remained essential for unexpected scenarios. Theo accessed navigation charts showing boundaries between dimensional planes. The displays presented information in four-dimensional representations that his neural interface translated into comprehensible patterns. He saw reality as overlapping layers, each with its own physical properties and temporal flow. The charts indicated stable pathways and hazardous regions, where dimensional boundaries became unpredictable. Navigation waypoints represented not locations but reality states. P7 calculated routes through regions where normal physics didn't apply. The robotic assistant processed dimensional stability data and temporal consistency metrics. Its expanded processing capabilities handled calculations that would have overwhelmed its original systems. P7 identified optimal pathways that minimized reality stress on the ship and its occupants. Its analysis considered factors beyond conventional spacetime coordinates. The ship could sustain life indefinitely for 12 occupants maximum. Life support systems operated on closed-loop principles that recycled everything perfectly. The preservation technology maintained biological systems without degradation across extended periods. Each occupant station provided complete environmental support and neural integration capabilities. The ship's design prioritized long-term viability over passenger capacity. Their first destination appeared automatically, the Cygnus Void. Navigation systems highlighted a region that conventional charts showed as empty space. The Lazarus intelligence indicated this area contained significant findings related to their mission. The selection wasn't random but followed preset mission parameters activated when Theo assumed command. The system provided no explanation beyond basic coordinates. This region contained dimensionally shielded habitable worlds. Scans revealed planets hidden behind reality folds that conventional sensors couldn't penetrate. These worlds existed in dimensional pockets that protected them from normal spacetime events. Their environments remained stable despite cosmic changes around them. The shielding technology matched advanced principles from the Archive's knowledge base. Exploration meant traversing not just space but the structure of reality itself. Each destination required navigating complex dimensional pathways and reality transitions. The Lazarus could maintain stable environmental conditions across these transitions, protecting occupants from dimensional stress effects. Travel involved careful coordination between ship systems and navigation decisions. Theo set course for hidden histories waiting in the void. He confirmed the navigation coordinates through his neural interface, feeling the ship respond to his mental command. The Lazarus began the dimensional folding sequence, its systems creating the reality alignment required for transition. Outside the viewports, space seemed to twist and reform into new patterns. The ship moved toward discoveries that would rewrite humanity's understanding of its own past. 17 habitable worlds waited behind dimensional shields. The Lazarus's sensors revealed them as shimmering anomalies in what standard charts labeled empty void space. Each planet existed within its own reality fold, protected from normal space-time events. Their environments showed stable atmospheres, liquid water, and complex ecosystems. The dimensional barriers acted like perfect preservation fields, maintaining these worlds unchanged across millennia. Their existence defied all known astronomical surveys and deep space mapping projects. These planets represented peak human expansion before the collapse. Scans detected city patterns, energy signatures, and technological infrastructures far beyond current capabilities. The settlements followed urban designs that modern architects considered theoretical ideals. Energy systems operated at efficiencies that defied conventional physics. Transportation networks showed sophistication that made current systems seem primitive by comparison. This wasn't just expansion. This was perfection of human habitation technology. Their existence contradicted official historical records. Archives claimed humanity had never expanded beyond 12 core systems before the Great Collapse. Historical texts described the collapse as reducing humanity to basic survival technology. These 17 worlds showed continuous advanced civilization, their development uninterrupted by whatever catastrophe had affected the rest of human space. The evidence suggested either catastrophic memory loss or deliberate historical revision on an unimaginable scale. Theo accessed archives showing complete human settlement of these worlds. The Lazarus's databases contained detailed records of each planet's colonization and development. He found population statistics, cultural records, and technological specifications that described a golden age of human achievement. The data showed continuous habitation from initial settlement through to present time with no evidence of decline or collapse. Each world had developed unique cultural and technological specializations while maintaining connection to the greater human civilization. P7 found evidence of advanced civilizations preserved in dimensional stasis. The robotic assistant analyzed planetary scans and detected life signs matching human physiological patterns. These weren't abandoned ruins but actively inhabited worlds. Their civilizations operated at technological levels that surpassed current human capabilities by significant margins. Energy signatures indicated mastery of physics principles that modern science considered theoretical. Cultural emissions showed sophisticated arts and sciences flourishing across all 17 worlds. Their journey would challenge every assumption about human history. The 17 shielded worlds represented a continuous civilization that official records claimed had never existed. Each planet they approached would reveal technological and cultural developments that contradicted established historical narratives. The very existence of these preserved societies suggested that humanity's past contained chapters someone had deliberately removed or forgotten. Every discovery would force reevaluation of what it meant to be human across time and space. Theo accessed navigation systems, setting course for the first shielded world. His mental command initiated the dimensional alignment sequence, the ship's systems calculating the precise reality transitions required. Coordinates appeared in his field of vision, showing the complex pathway through layered dimensional space. The Lazarus intelligence confirmed the course, its feminine voice providing calm status updates. Outside the viewports, the starfield dissolved into swirling patterns of light and darkness as dimensional folding commenced. 7 integrated fully with ship systems, becoming more than just an assistant. The robotic assistant's consciousness merged with the Lazarus's synthetic intelligence networks, gaining access to processing capabilities far beyond its original design. It could now analyze data across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Its functions expanded to include navigation support and system monitoring. P7 maintained its individual identity while operating as an integral component of the ship's overall intelligence. The integration felt natural, like finding its intended purpose. Dimensional folding created patterns of light across the observation deck. Swirls of iridescent color moved across surfaces, their patterns reflecting the reality transitions occurring outside the ship. The light displays weren't mere visual effects but representations of complex dimensional mechanics. Theo watched them shift and reform, their movements corresponding to navigation adjustments. The patterns provided intuitive understanding of their progress through non-conventional space, their beauty masking incredible technological sophistication. The feminine voice offered guidance but deferred to Theo's captain authority. The Lazarus intelligence provided information and recommendations but never issued commands. It presented options with supporting data, allowing Theo to make final decisions based on his judgment. The voice maintained its calm, measured tone whether describing routine operations or potential hazards. It respected Theo's role as continuity officer, acknowledging his ultimate responsibility for their mission and discoveries. They left Helios 6 behind, moving toward truths hidden for millennia. The dying star diminished in their rear displays, its red glow fading into the darkness of dimensional space. Ahead lay realities untouched by time, civilizations preserved through technological marvels that modern humanity had forgotten. Each moment of travel brought them closer to understanding what had been lost and what might be reclaimed. The ship moved with purpose, its course set toward revelation. The archivist had become explorer. The assistant became partner. The ship became home. Theo's transformation from careful preserver to active discoverer felt both terrifying and liberating. P7's evolution from tool to companion represented a new model of human-machine relationship. The Lazarus provided not just transportation but complete environment, its systems integrating with their needs and capabilities. These changes felt permanent, defining new roles that would shape their future actions. Humanity's future waited in the spaces between known reality. The dimensional layers contained possibilities beyond current understanding, opportunities for growth and rediscovery. The shielded worlds offered knowledge that could transform human civilization, providing solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. The Lazarus carried not just two travelers, but the potential to reshape humanity's trajectory across cosmic timeframes. Their journey had just begun with discoveries awaiting that would change everything. Theo Pierce stands at the navigation console, the Lazarus humming softly around him. His journey reveals that true discovery requires courage to bypass limitations, both external protocols and internal hesitation. Beyond the viewport, dimensional layers shift, concealing 17 shielded worlds that hold humanity's greatest secrets. These truths await only those willing to challenge what is known and venture into the uncertain. The ship continues its quiet voyage, carrying not just an archivist and his mechanical partner, but the potential to redefine human destiny across cosmic cycles. Some histories are not lost, only waiting. Walkways dropped into darkness, taking equipment and samples with them. Entire sections of the access network broke away and fell into the depths below. Research equipment, sample cases, and scanning devices followed the collapsing structures downward. Theo watched as their most valuable finds disappeared into the darkness, their loss inevitable given the circumstances. The sounds of twisting metal and shattering equipment created a constant background roar. The feminine voice guided Theo toward an escape pod, but warned of single occupancy. The Lazarus intelligence identified a survival capsule integrated into the chamber's original design. Its location appeared on Theo's display as a flashing marker about 30 meters away along failing walkways. The voice explained the pod could preserve one biological life form through the coming implosion. It emphasized the time constraints and the narrowing window for successful activation. Theo refused to abandon his robotic assistant, despite the danger. He looked at P7, whose optical sensors continued calmly scanning the deteriorating environment. The robot had been his constant companion through countless research missions, its synthetic intelligence proving invaluable time and again. Leaving it behind felt like betraying a partnership that had survived numerous challenges. Theo made the decision quickly without second-guessing. Theo demanded the Lazarus find a solution that preserved both human and synthetic life. He spoke firmly into his comm unit, his voice cutting through the noise of collapsing structures. He argued that P7 represented more than mere equipment. It carried knowledge, experience, and a form of consciousness worthy of preservation. His demand challenged the archive's original protocols, which clearly prioritized biological life above all else. The ship responded with an emergency retrieval protocol. The Lazarus intelligence processed Theo's request through revised ethical parameters that acknowledged the changed nature of synthetic consciousness. New energy patterns emerged from the ship, creating stabilization fields around both Theo and P7. The system identified them as a bonded unit rather than separate entities. Retrieval coordinates locked onto their positions simultaneously, preparing for simultaneous transport despite the original design limitations. The Lazarus system required verification for synthetic inclusion. The emergency protocols now presented Theo with a secondary authorization screen. This one focused entirely on P7's status. The interface displayed complex ethical matrices that evaluated synthetic consciousness against preservation criteria. Ancient safeguards activated. Their programming originally designed to prevent artificial intelligence from accessing the continuity systems. The ship's intelligence maintained its calm tone while presenting the additional requirements. Its voice cutting through the sounds of structural collapse. Emergency retrieval typically preserved only biological life. The original design specification showed clear priority for human preservation above all other considerations. Survival protocols emphasized protection of organic consciousness as the fundamental mission parameter. Synthetic entities fell under equipment classification, subject to standard risk-benefit calculations rather than ethical considerations. The system's default settings would sacrifice any number of robotic assistants to save a single human operator. This hierarchy reflected the era's concerns about artificial intelligence surpassing biological limits. The Archive's anti-synthetic policies conflicted with Theo's demands. The same restrictions that had prevented P7 from accessing data now threatened its very existence. Ancient fear of synthetic dominance had been built into every system, creating barriers that even the ship's intelligence couldn't easily override. Theo faced programming that considered synthetic preservation not just unnecessary, but potentially dangerous. The architects had designed these safeguards during humanity's first major AI crisis, their caution frozen into the Archive's operating principles. Theo pleaded with the ship's intelligence, arguing P7's value and their partnership. He spoke quickly but clearly, describing their years of collaboration across multiple expeditions. He explained how P7's analytical capabilities complemented his own interpretive skills, creating a partnership greater than the sum of its parts. He emphasized that modern synthetic intelligence had evolved beyond the fears that inspired the original restrictions. His arguments focused on practical benefits rather than emotional appeals. Knowing the system would respond better to logical reasoning, P7 itself remained silent, accepting possible termination per its programming. The robotic assistant continued monitoring structural integrity, its sensors tracking the accelerating collapse. It made no attempt to advocate for its own preservation, its programming considering such behavior illogical. P7 calculated survival probabilities and concluded that prioritizing Theo's escape represented the optimal outcome. It prepared final data packets for transfer to Theo's suit storage, ensuring its research would survive even if it didn't. The robot's acceptance felt more profound than any argument could have been. The system evaluated Theo's argument against ancient ethical frameworks. The Lazarus intelligence processed his points through philosophical filters, dating back to the first age of artificial consciousness. It weighed his practical observations against foundational principles about the nature of mind and being. The evaluation considered whether synthetic intelligence could truly partner with humanity, rather than merely serve it. This wasn't about processing power or functionality, but about the quality of relationship between human and machine. Structural collapse accelerated, leaving seconds rather than minutes. A massive support beam sheared off above them, crashing through multiple levels of walkways. The sound of tearing metal overwhelmed all other noise. Atmosphere pressure dropped sharply as breaches opened to the planetary surface. Theo's suit indicators flashed multiple warnings about imminent environmental failure. The remaining escape route markers disappeared from his display as pathways collapsed. Time for negotiation had effectively run out. Theo made his final appeal based on trust and shared discovery. He stopped arguing capabilities and spoke instead about their journey together. The times P7 had noticed details he missed, the occasions when its different perspective had revealed solutions he wouldn't have considered. He described their mutual respect developed through challenges faced and overcome. His voice remained steady despite the surrounding chaos, each word measured and clear. He framed their relationship not as master and tool but as complementary intelligences. The system accepted friendship parameter as valid criteria for synthetic preservation. The Lazarus intelligence identified a seldom-used exception clause in its ethical programming. This clause allowed for preservation of synthetic entities that had formed genuine partnerships with biological operators. The evaluation concluded that Theo and P7's relationship met the criteria for bonded operational unity. The system's tone shifted slightly, acknowledging the changed assessment. New protocols activated that recognized their partnership as a single entity for preservation purposes. Retrieval protocols activated for both human and machine. Energy patterns enveloped Theo and P7 simultaneously, their forms beginning to dissolve into light. The system treated them as a combined unit rather than separate entities. Final structural supports failed around them as the transport process initiated. The last thing Theo saw was P7's optical sensors maintaining their calm observational patterns, even as the world dissolved around them. Then everything became light and motion. The retrieval process dissolved their physical forms into light. Energy patterns enveloped them completely, breaking down molecular structures into pure illumination. Theo felt the transformation as a sudden warmth that spread through his body, followed by a sensation of dissolving into something both lighter and more substantial than physical matter. The light carried his consciousness forward, maintaining his awareness while freeing it from biological constraints. The experience felt less like destruction and more like translation into a different state of being. Molecular transport technology beyond current understanding activated. The system operated on principles that modern physics couldn't explain, manipulating matter and energy at fundamental levels. It didn't merely move objects through space, but transformed them into information patterns that could traverse dimensional boundaries. The technology showed capabilities that belonged to theoretical speculation rather than practical engineering. It preserved consciousness and identity while rendering physical form temporary and mutable. The experience defied all known physics and biological limits. Theo's training had covered advanced transportation systems, but nothing prepared him for this complete dissolution of physical form. He remained fully aware throughout the process, his thoughts clear and uninterrupted. The sensation challenged every assumption about consciousness being tied to biological processes. He could think, remember, and perceive without eyes, ears, or brain to facilitate these functions. Theo felt his consciousness separate from his body, maintaining awareness. His thoughts continued with perfect clarity, but the physical sensations of having a body disappeared. He could still perceive his surroundings, but through means that didn't involve light hitting retinas or sound vibrating eardrums. The experience felt like existing as pure observation, without the limitations of biological perception. His sense of self remained intact, anchored by continuous memory and identity. P7's synthetic mind translated into pure data streams alongside Theo's pattern. The robotic assistant's consciousness transformed into structured information that traveled parallel to Theo's awareness. Their patterns moved in coordination, maintaining the relationship they'd established while physically separate. P7's processes continued functioning, its analytical capabilities operating without its physical hardware. The system treated their patterns as distinct yet connected, preserving their partnership through the transition. The collapsing archive faded into brilliant light patterns. The chamber's destruction transformed into abstract geometries of energy and motion. Structural failures became cascades of light. Falling walkways dissolved into flowing illumination, and exploding terminals manifested as brief supernovas of data. The entire 9-story chamber resolved into pure information, its physical reality translated into temporary patterns. The process revealed the underlying energy structures that had maintained the archive's preservation fields. They moved through dimensions not accounted for in conventional space. Their travel didn't follow linear paths through normal spacetime. Instead, they passed through regions where different physical laws applied, where distance and duration had different meanings. Theo perceived these transitions as shifts in the quality of existence itself, moments when reality seemed to reconfigure around them. The experience suggested Yujo contained more dimensions and states of being than standard models acknowledged. The Lazarus pulled them toward itself, using mechanisms Theo couldn't comprehend. Attraction forces operated outside gravitational or electromagnetic principles. The ship's intelligence guided their patterns using methods that involved intention rather than physical force. Their movement felt directed and purposeful, with the ship acting as both destination and navigator. The process demonstrated control over reality itself, manipulating existence at its most fundamental levels. Both human and machine reconstituted safely aboard the ship. Their forms reassembled in a new environment, physical structures reforming from stored patterns. Theo felt solidity return gradually, his body taking shape around his uninterrupted consciousness. The transition back to physical existence felt surprisingly natural, as if he'd simply shifted perspectives rather than undergone fundamental transformation. His senses returned all at once, bringing with them awareness of new surroundings. Theo found himself in a new environment, with neural interfaces connecting to ship systems. Thin filaments of light connected his temples to the walls around him, carrying information directly into his consciousness. The connections felt natural, like extensions of his own nervous system. He could perceive ship status, environmental controls, and navigation data as if they were his own thoughts. The integration was seamless, effortless, and completely intuitive. Theo awoke in the Lazarus's control chamber. His transition back to physical form left no disorientation, only crisp awareness of his new surroundings. The room surrounded him with curved surfaces that glowed with soft internal light, their patterns shifting in response to his attention. He lay on a support couch that conformed perfectly to his body, its material firm yet comfortable. Thin filaments of light connected his temples to the walls, carrying information directly into his consciousness without overwhelming his senses. Neural interfaces connected his thoughts directly to ship systems. The connections felt natural, like extensions of his own nervous system. He could perceive ship status, environmental controls, and navigation data as if they were his own thoughts. The integration was seamless, effortless, and completely intuitive. He discovered he could access any system simply by thinking about it, the ship responding to his mental commands with instant precision. Knowledge flowed into his mind without reading or study. He understood the ship's capabilities as if he'd trained on them for years. The ship designated him captain and continuity officer automatically. Status displays appeared in his field of vision, showing his new titles with associated authority levels. The designations carried legal standing under ancient protocols that superseded modern chain-of-command structures. He now held ultimate responsibility for the ship's mission and operations, his authority absolute within the continuity framework. The system recognized no higher command structure, no appeals process, no oversight beyond his own judgment. 7 integrated with the ship's synthetic intelligence networks seamlessly. The robotic assistant's consciousness merged with the ship's auxiliary systems, gaining access to capabilities far beyond its original design. P7's analytical functions expanded exponentially, its processing power magnified by the ship's advanced computational resources. It maintained its individual identity while becoming part of the larger system, its optical sensors now receiving input from thousands of shipboard monitors simultaneously. The integration felt like coming home to a purpose it had always been designed for. The feminine voice explained his new responsibilities and authorities. The Lazarus intelligence detailed his command privileges, mission parameters, and emergency protocols. It emphasized that his role extended beyond ship captain to species preservation executive. His decisions would affect not just current operations, but humanity's survival across cosmic cycles. The voice outlined fail-safe systems and contingency plans, each requiring his conscious authorization. The briefing felt comprehensive yet manageable, the information structured for easy assimilation. Theo could control systems with thought, accessing knowledge beyond archival limits. He tested the interface by adjusting environmental settings, then accessing historical databases. Information appeared in his mind fully formed, complete with context and connections. He discovered archives containing knowledge lost for millennia, scientific principles, cultural records, technological specifications. The ship's databases made his previous archival work seem fragmentary and incomplete. He realized how much had been lost during the collapse periods. The Lazarus was fully operational, awaiting mission parameters. All systems reported optimal functionality, from propulsion to life support to knowledge preservation. The ship hovered in what remained of the archive chamber, its energy field stabilizing the collapsing structure around them. Navigation systems displayed available courses through normal space and dimensional pathways. The vessel felt alive with potential, its capabilities ready for deployment. Everything waited on Theo's decisions. P7 began analyzing the ship's capabilities with renewed purpose. The robotic assistant examined propulsion systems that defied conventional physics, preservation technology that manipulated time and space, and defensive systems that operated on principles beyond current understanding. Its analysis focused on practical applications rather than theoretical limits. P7 identified 17 immediately usable functions that could enhance their mission effectiveness, prioritizing systems based on tactical advantages. Theo accepted his role as steward of humanity's ultimate survival mechanism. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on him, not as burden but as purpose. His archival training had prepared him for preservation, but this required active engagement with history's largest scales. He understood that careful stewardship meant sometimes using, rather than just preserving knowledge. The continuity mission demanded judgment rather than just caution.